to join us here. We did say we'd start at 12 o'clock, and we promised we'd keep you within an hour and serve you lunch. But we're very thankful that you came in today. Our hope is that you leave and you will have learned something about the Red Cross maybe you didn't know. We hope that it will be inspiring to you, and we're just very thankful to share our Red Cross story with you today. I'm Kate Daniels. I know a handful of you, I don't know everybody, but I've been a board member here at the Red Cross for 2 years, and my first involvement with the Red Cross was actually 4 years ago. And it happened right down the street on Ash Street at Pac 10 TV. There was a morning show, weekly morning show. It was called Carolina Daybreak. And I had the opportunity to co-host with Jim Hennett. And we would go on weekly and we would bring people in from the community to talk about community events and things going on around town. And one Tuesday morning, in walks Sammy Garner. If you haven't met her, you'll meet her in a little bit. But at the time, she was the blood services coordinator here at the Red Cross. So she was lining up blood drives and taking care of all that. And she came in to simply talk about just that. She had a 5-minute segment, and I, of course, at the beginning of the interview made it very clear to her that I too was a blood donor and had been for quite some time. And we had a great conversation talking about all the blood drives that take place right here in Wayne County. So as the interview was coming to a close, there's a little clock that ticks that lets you know how much time you have. So I knew I had time for one more question. And I looked at her and I said, Sammy, can you tell me what you would say to somebody who's at home watching this interview that would want to donate but they're too afraid to? And I tell you that her answer changed my life. She, of course, proceeded to talk about the process of donating blood, how many lives it can help. But she said, she went into detail talking about you don't ever know when there's going to be a blood need, whether it's a neighbor, a father, a child. You just don't ever know. So she left, and I got in my car, and I felt so good about what the Red Cross was doing right here in our own community, but I was a little embarrassed because, you see, I lied. I had never given blood in my life. I was terrified of needles. And I tell you this not so you judge my character, because this is not a character flaw. I was conducting an interview and I was setting up a good question, but it did change. It changed my outlook on things. So I, picked myself back up and went to work and went on with my day and scheduled to donate blood for the first time. And have donated blood as often as I can ever since, and have helped put on the annual bank challenge for the Red Cross. I work at the North Carolina Community Credit Union. So it was a very eye-opening experience, and it was actually a very pleasant one. I was so scared when I came in, very scared. But there were 2 volunteers. It took 2 of them to hold my hand like this. But anyways, I tell you that because I do want you to know that's where my story came from, and that's what brought me to the Red Cross. And the things that I learn about what are happening here every day keep me wanting to come back. So I will turn it over now to Chuck Waller, who's the Executive Director of Wayne Greene and Lenoir County Red Cross. And he's going to tell you a little bit about where we are right now, but more importantly, where we want to be in the future. Some numbers. So I'll turn it over.
We do this much of this and this much of that. But what I want you to understand, behind every single one of those numbers is somebody's story that's impacted by what we do. In April of 1917, there were a group of ladies right here in Wayne County called the National Special Aid Society, and they were knitting garments for World War I troops. And at that April meeting, a motion was made that they wanted to become an American Red Cross chapter. And the minutes say, after intensive and exhaustive discussion, the motion carried. And when Woodrow Wilson signed the charter the next month, it was official. Our little chapter was born. And from those humble beginnings today, we're an operation that oversees 3 counties. And on any given day, we're responsible for delivering services to about 175,000 citizens with a tremendous staff of about 6. So, we are part of a communication network that can deliver an emergency message across thousands of miles of earth to one of our armed forces heroes. In the twinkling of an eye, whether they're in a thatch hut in the Sudan or in the jungles in the Philippines, we can get that message delivered no matter where they are. In the twinkling of an eye, we can dispatch teams of trained volunteers to literally anywhere across this land Mother Nature unleashes her fury. Forgive me just a second. But day in and day out, it's not the tornadoes and the hurricanes and the floods that sap this organization of its resources. Day in and day out, it's that silent disaster. It's the single-family fire. We'll respond to about 75,000 fires a year in the United States, about one a week right here in Wayne County. Upon being called, we show up within 2 hours of being called, whether it's in the richest neighborhood or the poorest neighborhood. We're on site. We're there to assist with lodging. We're there to assist with food. We're there to assist with clothing, replacement medications. We're there to give out stuffed animals to the frightened little ones. We are there to give out comfort kits with toothbrush, toothpaste, shampoo, soap, deodorant. Of course, we're there to lend a shoulder to cry on when it is just too much to bear. During an average week, we'll empower about 100 of your friends and neighbors with the life-saving skills of CPR and first aid. About 5,000 people a year are trained in CPR and first aid by this little chapter. We can teach your children to swim, we can teach them to lifeguard, we can teach them to babysit. Heck, fire, we can teach you CPR for your cats and your dogs if that's important to you. Every day of the year but one, we're out in your backyard twisting arms, begging people to give the gift of life. There is a blood drive in Wayne County almost every other day. During a normal year, we'll collect enough blood to touch up to 19,000 lives right here in your backyard. In this age of extraordinary medical advancement, in this age of amazing, absolutely amazing medical technology, there is still no substitute for blood. The American Red Cross mission statement reads that we're a humanitarian organization led by volunteers, guided by our congressional charter and the fundamental principles of the International Red Crescent movement that helps victims of disaster and helps people prevent, prepare, and respond to emergencies. The foundation, the cornerstone of every single thing that we do are those fundamental principles, which you'll see in a few minutes. But then there are words like neutrality, which means we don't discriminate on the basis of religious beliefs, political beliefs, or nationality. In there are words like humanitarian, which means our role in everything we do is to alleviate human suffering. And there are words like voluntary service. And folks, that very simply means there are no hidden agendas. Everyone that's engaged in this movement is a part of it because they want to help the community. Over the years I've been asked, what is it that has so endeared me to the American Red Cross? And I would love to sit here today and tell you it's the short work week and the lofty pay, but I would be somewhat less than honest if that was the answer that I gave you. But got to tell you, I've known deep down there's always been a tug for me to be a part of what we do. Couldn't tell you why, but I'd always felt that tug. You see, since the early 80s, someone in my family has had a leadership role in what we do here. And as I said, there's always been that tug for me to support and assist with what we do. Again, I couldn't tell you what and I couldn't tell you why, but I knew that some way, somehow I need to have a part or a hand in what we do. And in August of 2002, I attended a blood services recognition event in Wilmington, North Carolina. And on that day, I saw a young man up there about my age. He was probably younger than me because I wasn't real young in 2002. But a young man up there that day very eloquently, very powerfully, and very emotionally share his little girl's struggle with the blood need that began when she was 2. Her name was Caroline. And her journey spanned years, and he would tell how time and time again that precious little girl needed blood, and how time and time again the American Red Cross made sure the blood was there. And I'll never forget him saying, he said there were days during that journey, he said, I wasn't sure I was going to be strong enough to take it. He said, but on those days, some way, somehow, she seemed to know that I was struggling. And he said, and then she would invariably look up at me with those big brown eyes, with all the innocence in the heart of a child, and she would say, Daddy, it's going to be okay. And he would say, I'm the adult. I'm supposed to be picking her up, carrying her. And there she is, the child lifted me up and carried me. It was a story that I'll never forget. It was a story that grabbed me to the point that it would not let me go. And for days and weeks and months, I played it and replayed it over and over in my head, because on that day I knew that but for the grace of God, that's me up there telling that story and him sitting in my seat hearing it. And as I said, for days and weeks and months that story played and replayed itself over and over in my head. And one day the good Lord finally whispered to me, he said, Chuck, he said, the reason that story is so important to you, he said, is there was a blood need that I met in the life of a child in your family many years ago that you have long forgotten. And I thought, oh my, how in the world did I miss that one? You see, at birth for me, there were complications. If that birth occurs somewhere other than a teaching hospital where the blood and the expertise are not readily available, there is perhaps no story to tell. And I said, that's it, isn't it? That's it. If the blood's not there, I'm not here. That's right, isn't it? Good Lord said, yeah. And then he said something I'll never forget. He said, that's right. Not only are you not here, but neither are your children. And it was at that moment that I understood the tug. Since 1917, this little chapter has been meeting needs of people in our own backyard and people all across this great land. Since 1917, it mattered whether or not we were engaged in a military conflict or world war. We responded. Since 1917, it mattered whether or not the world was recession or depression. We responded. Since 1917, it mattered not whether it was Hurricane Hazel in the 50s, Hurricanes Fran and Floyd in the 90s, whether it was that horrific day of 9/11 or Hurricane Katrina, the Haiti earthquake, or the North Carolina tornadoes just a few months ago. When the call came, we responded. But imagine with me, if you will, what if we could step beyond response? What if we could go identify the most fire-prone areas in the community and get out in front of those fires with fire prevention education through the churches and through the schools and stop the fires before they start? Think of the dollars we could save in the Red Cross world. Think of the dollars that we could save in fire department response. Statistics tell us that the children most likely to drown in the course of a given year are those that cannot swim. Imagine with me, what if we could identify those at-risk children and teach them to swim for free, thereby mitigating the risk of drowning in the life of those children forever? Statistics tell us that one more blood donation per year from the current pool of blood donors, one more blood donation per year would eliminate those very scary dips in the blood supply. One more blood donation per year provides those sunrises and sunsets and walks on the beaches and birthdays and anniversaries and hugs from children and hugs from grandchildren. One more blood donation per year provides all those precious life moments that might not have been. I want you to imagine with us where we can go. Imagine with us what we can accomplish. Imagine with us what we can become. I will now put you in the capable hands of Sammy Garner. She is our...
wasn't quite as illustrious as Chuck's. I had decided long ago to stay home with my children and raise them, and all of a sudden one day realized that they had grown, and I was by myself all the time, and I thought, I'm ready to get back in the workplace. Well, it had been 15 years since I'd done an interview, probably 20 since I'd even written a resume, and I knew I needed to practice. And I saw this little ad in the paper one day, and I thought, what? That's a good place to start. I walked into Red Cross, and I thought, oh, I don't stand a chance. I saw other people waiting to be interviewed, and I thought, well, you know what? This was just for practice anyway, so I'm just going to go give it my all. 6.5 years later, here I am. During that interview, Chuck said to me, he said, one of his questions was, what do you think about the Red Cross? I don't think about the Red Cross. And I said that to him. Part of the purpose and our hopes today of this tour is that you probably don't think of Red Cross on a daily basis. We hope that when you leave here, you will know a little bit more, and maybe the Red Cross will be at the forefront of your thoughts on a more regular basis. Chuck and I were at an event. I had not been here very, very long, and we were in, I think that event may have been Charlotte also, and a very eloquent speaker, and he said, you know, I have found that everybody I've ever come across has a Red Cross story. And of course, this was a Red Cross meeting, so he said, if you have a Red Cross story, raise your hand. Well, lo and behold, every hand in the room went up except mine. And I'm looking around, I'm going, oh my God, I don't have a Red Cross story. I punched Chuck, I said, does working for the Red Cross count? He said, well, I don't think that's what he's looking for. I went, do I have a Red Cross story? Well, I totally tuned out to even what was being said because I was so panicked. This gentleman had made the statement he had never come across anyone that didn't have a Red Cross story. And I was frantically looking in my mind for my Red Cross story. Moved forward several months, and I don't know why it came up one night at the dinner table, and I was retelling the story, and I was so embarrassed and felt like the spotlight was on me because I was the only person that had their hand up. My mother said, well, what do you mean? Of course you have a Red Cross story. I went, no, I don't. I've thought and thought and thought. I don't have a Red Cross story. She said, have you forgotten we had a fire at our home? And I went, oh my gosh, we did. She said, Red Cross was on the scene pretty much exactly the same time the fire trucks came up. They were there offering to help, and I went, oh my God, where were you 2 months ago? I could have raised my hand. She said, well, actually, you have another Red Cross story. I went, I do? This is getting really good. I can't wait till next year's meeting. She said, when you were born, I had to have a blood transfusion. If Red Cross had not collected the blood, I don't know if I'd have made it. I said, wow, I started off with no story at all, and now I have two. The guy was right. Maybe everybody really does have a Red Cross story. I would challenge you today as I lead you through on the tour and you see and hear and feel things. Keep in mind that maybe somewhere deep down you've got a Red Cross story too that you haven't thought about or hadn't actually realized that you had. I would challenge you to try to find that story, because I do believe what the guy said was true. Maybe we really do all have a Red Cross story. Now, I'm going to be your tour director today, and I'm going to take you to several vignettes that will help you to get an idea, whether it's seeing, hearing, feeling, what we do on a regular basis here in the community. So at this point, I'm going to ask you to join me, and we're going to